Peter Schrager here on the Rich Eisen Show from Good Morning Football and Fox Sports. How are you, Peter? Did I nail that? Did I kind of stick the landing on John Schneider's 2 cents on the subject, or am I off?
Kinda. You did a good job, and Dr. Melfi's a great reference to the greatest television show to ever hit the airwaves.
Yes.
I'll tell you, I spoke with sources in Chicago, and the feeling I get is almost like, we didn't ask for this. Their agent named us, and that's when we got involved. Like, the Bears have this thing where Mark Rodgers, the agent, tells Adam Schefter that Chicago's one of the teams, and the Bears pounced immediately. And lest us think that the Bears didn't go for this, you're right, Rich. There's nothing they can do. They didn't have a quarterback they could offer, but they offered just about everything else. I'll tell you that. I don't have all the details, but I've spoken with folks in Chicago, and let's just say they came to the table with what they could offer. And at the end of the day, they were all in Fargo together. John Schneider, Ryan Pace, Matt Nagy. There were conversations being had. They were there for Trey Lance's pro day last week. And unfortunately for Bears fans, Russell Wilson wasn't being traded. And so to the fans who are like, we got it, we should never have dropped the phone. Well, it'd be nice to have Josh Allen, too. You can't just trade for Josh Allen. It'd be nice for Mahomes, too. You can't just trade for him. So they went down the list, and Winston was a conversation. Look, he's already got Sean Payton's eye, and he's a year into Sean Payton's system. That made sense for both of them. Ryan Fitzpatrick, they looked at, 38 years old, never been to a playoff game. I don't know, is that an upgrade from Dalton? And then they went through it with Alex Smith and the rest, and it was like, here's Andy Dalton, 33 years old, can still throw the football. He's not going to hurt you. He might not win you many games with his arm, but he's certainly not going to lose you many games with his arm. Let's roll the dice for a one-year deal. But, gosh, I wanted the Russell Wilson thing to happen, too, if I'm a Bears fan. It just wasn't. And unfortunately, this really was all started by Russell Wilson's camp, even putting Chicago out there.
So I guess because that was my next question, and you kind of answered it with the plan B, because, when you said Fargo, it did jump out at me, like, that the Bears fans are kind of viewing them like Jerry Lundegaard trying to scratch out the VIN numbers to throw off the scent on exactly how this all started. You know what I mean? And so the plan B is now, I guess, to go run off to the hotel to try and escape the NFL Bears fans police by saying Andy Dalton's our best option. Is that truly their only best option? I mean, like, what was their plan going into the offseason fully? I mean, like, you could see the writing on the Trubisky wall way back even to last year's training camp where they were hoping Foles was going to push him. So what was the plan before Mark Rodgers did open his mouth to Schefter to say, we'll go to Chicago? I mean, what about that one?
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think Andy Dalton might have been on the top of the list even then. Look, they decided last year that Trubisky was going to have a one-year opportunity to prove himself. They didn't pick up the option. They could have done what the Eagles did and signed Wentz to a $100 million deal and then be kicking themselves and having to trade him 60 cents on the dollar 2 years later. They could have done what the Rams did and kind of put lipstick on a pig here and said, look, we got Stafford, but you also did sign Goff 2 years ago to that $100 million deal. The Bears went against the grain, didn't sign Trubisky to that big deal. They're probably happy they didn't sign Trubisky to that deal. And the way the cards fell, the Darnold trade wasn't happening. I don't even know if they explored Sam. Cam Newton wasn't happening. I'm not even sure that was an option. But they looked at this offseason and said, okay, there's going to be some quarterback options. Let's see what we can do. Unfortunately for them, they went to the playoffs, and they have the 20th overall pick. So they can't just say it's going to be Trey Lance. It's going to be Justin Fields. So the best option that they believed that was still currently on the table is Andy Dalton. Look, they're not doing flips right now. They're excited to have a new quarterback, and they think they can win with Andy Dalton because of how good their defense is and because what they're building, and that Dalton is a formidable NFL quarterback. But sure, they understand this isn't one that the fan base necessarily going to be doing parades over. And, the Fargo reference and the Shemmy and Francis McDormand, all of that,
yes.
I'm picturing them in the snow, kind of like with the footprints in the snow and just kind of getting through this. But who knows? A year from now, we could be looking at this and saying either A, Dalton went 10-6 and the defense is really good, and look, they're back to what they were a couple of years ago, or we could be looking at, hey, they're 5-11 and Matt Nagy maybe isn't the quarterback whisperer we thought, because here's another quarterback that couldn't get it done. I think they know the time is up, and they know what time it is. And for them, Andy Dalton is who they're putting their eggs in the basket with.
Peter Schrager here on the Rich Eisen Show. What do you think? And again, I hesitate to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. And my hesitation is from Andy Dalton deserves better. I said to lead the show, one of the things I said was that Dalton deserves the Foles sort of baptism by the football gods to just go on a run for his career and just be able to say, yeah, I got it done. Because he deserves all the hard work that he's made himself into and what he and his wife have done charitable works-wise. I mean, he totally deserves anything but kind of the treatment I'm about to give him. What do you think the Packers are thinking today, Peter?
Yeah, look, here's the thing with Andy Dalton, to your point on Andy. Great pro. You've probably interviewed him more than a dozen times. And, it must mean he's a pretty good player when he's interviewing with Rich Eisen on the Thursday night set. Probably a handful of times. It means he's won a lot of games in his career. And, I spoke to someone who's coached Andy Dalton. They said, okay, he's getting lambasted right now. He's getting made fun of. And, yesterday I'm watching NFL Network that we both work on, and Steve Smith's on there saying that the Bears are the big winners of free agency because it means it guarantees them, a top 5 pick next year, and they're going to finally get another chance at a quarterback because that's how bad they're going to be. And it's a line, and it's funny, and we smirk, but it's like, Dalton's a proud man. Remember, this is a guy who was a second-round pick, won a Rose Bowl at TCU over Wisconsin, went on and won the job in Cincinnati, went to the playoffs, and has been overlooked his entire career. This is what I got from a person who's coached him, and I thought it was something that I wouldn't be able to say unless, someone with knowledge of it goes, Andy Dalton's been a redhead guy his entire life, and he's been picked on since he was a kid. He's always been the redheaded quarterback. He's always been looked at as this, like, wow, here's this redheaded dude in the room of all these players. And he's always come out as being the alpha in the room. And he's always found a way to win. And he's been fighting haters his entire career. This is no different. He's going to thrive there. So I know we don't look at Andy Dalton as like the Tom Brady type where it's a 6th-round pick and I've been overlooked and I'm going to keep that on the chip on my shoulder and the whole thing. But there might be something to that. And if players all seem to like playing for him and the coaches all love coaching for him and he's now the joke of the NFL all of a sudden, Andy Dalton's the joke of the NFL with all his playoff appearances, maybe he internalizes that, and maybe this ends up being Andy Dalton in the redemption season that we've been waiting for.
That's why I'm saying he deserves it, Peter, but the fact is that he isn't Aaron Rodgers and he isn't Tom Brady, and those are the two teams that played in the NFC Championship game, and if the Bears want to get where they want to go with a coach and a general manager that's hanging on by a thread, then how does this move actually work? And Bears fans are absolutely right to go to have a major problem with the direction of this team, fully knowing that Brady's about to run it back. And that's why I asked how the Packers are feeling, because they sign Aaron Jones, and at least we know, we're thinking they're not going to draft a quarterback or running back with their first-round pick. They're going to get better. They're actually going to start adding to this offense that has Tunyon, that has a defense that they are going to reconfigure with a new defensive coordinator. That's why I asked you what the Packers are thinking today.
Yeah, the Packers are probably thinking we're in good shape because we've been 13-3 the past 2 years. We've got Aaron Rodgers at quarterback.
Right.
But I'll tell you what, they weren't doing any, Aaron Jones is a good deal. We'll see. Those numbers, by the way, still haven't been reported fully. We'll see what he ends up making there. But by choosing Aaron Jones, they had to let Corey Linsley walk. And I know this isn't a fantasy football player, but he's an all-pro first-team center,
right,
and he just got paid the most money ever by a center by the Chargers. And if you're Aaron Rodgers, you want all your guys back, and you want Aaron Jones, and you want Devontae Adams. Well, getting your center back would have been great, too. So every team is dealing with this right now, and no bigger issue than the quarterback in Chicago. I understand that. But here's the Packers, and Aaron Rodgers just lost his all-pro center a couple of years after losing Bulaga. And guess what? Shaq Barrett sacked him 3 times in the NFC Championship game. So everyone's got issues. If you're not in Tampa, I think you're feeling the heat right now, including Green Bay.
Peter Schrager here on the Rich Eisen Show. So other than Belichick creating Billcoin as a cryptocurrency, this free agency, and also this story in Chicago, what are the stories of free agency so far as we celebrate the new league year officially and everything that we've heard about over the last several weeks, from Matthew Stafford to the Rams and Goff to the Lions, all the way to the present day becomes official? What's the story, do you think? Peter?
Yeah, I think the wide receivers is an interesting deal right now, Rich, because here was a market that we knew was going down, and yet to not have any of the big-name wide receivers get any money yet, and I don't think they're going to get top dollar, tells me that there was a market that might have been expected by some of their agents that doesn't exist. Because I know a lot of these guys, and I'll say Kenny Golladay to start, was offered a deal midway through the year that I think if he was to be presented with right now, would probably accept. JuJu Smith-Schuster says, I'm going to go hit free agency. Let's go break the bank. The money's not there right now. And I'm trying to piece it together, talking to a lot of teams, saying, is it because the wide receivers just aren't truly number one guys, Galladay and Schuster and Curtis Samuel, or is it something about the actual position and the fact that there are receivers coming out in the draft every year who you can get in the first, second, or third round, and it could be Justin Jefferson, or it could be A.J. Brown, or it could be D.K. Metcalf, and the answer is it's both of those things, and it's a freaking pandemic. Our salary cap is way down, and no one expected it to be a year ago when they were saving up all their money to see how we look towards the future. So pass rushers, they're always going to get paid. Pass protectors are always going to get paid. Quarterbacks are always going to get paid. Unfortunately, wide receivers, which usually always get paid, are not getting paid. And I'm curious to see if all these guys end up signing one-year deals and are back on the market next year.
So you're saying wide receivers are the new running back? Pretty much?
Sort of.
That's what it looks like.
I mean, think about it. Especially it's interesting because Stephon Diggs delivered, right? And DeAndre Hopkins delivered, but you look at a JuJu, or you look at a Kenny Golladay, or a Curtis Samuel, or even a T.Y. Hilton, Will Fuller. They're not Stephon Diggs. They're not going to be DeAndre Hopkins. So then, what is that next class, and what am I worth? And in the past, salary cap was going up, 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 up. Someone will pay for them, and they'll figure it out. And they'll be a Jaguar, and they'll whatever, and we'll figure it out. This year, teams were just like, no, I'm not spending money on wide receiver. So we always said, mamas teach your children to be quarterbacks and not to be running backs, maybe not wide receivers either.
Peter Schrager here on the Rich Eisen Show. I know you're tight with Robert Saleh, and the Jets hold all the cards right now because it's Trevor Lawrence, Jacksonville Jaguar, Urban Meyer marriage, and then so now we're looking at two, and the decision that the Jets make there is crucial because if they take the rookie, then who gets Darnold? If they stick with Darnold, who gets the rookie? And then, of course, whatever the heck is going on in Houston with Deshaun Watson and the Texans and the city of Houston makes that a completely potentially turbulent situation. So now that we're beginning to get through the first rush of free agency, what is that crucial decision that the Jets are going to make look like right now? Rich, it's fascinating because, Ian Rappaport's on our network, on NFL Network, and Schefter's on ESPN, and the report is that they haven't made their decision yet. I got to be honest with you. They haven't. I've spoken to them. They're like, we're still doing the work on the quarterbacks. And Joe Douglas went out to North Dakota to see Trey Lance in person. He'll be out at BYU's Pro Day to see Zach Wilson in person. They have the number 2 pick. You hope to never have the number 2 pick in the next 20 years, or at least in your GM tenure. You think that if there's a quarterback that blows you away and is like, this guy's going to be an all-pro, this guy's got Joe Burrow or Herbert quality, all right, let's take him with the number 2 overall pick, because the thing with Darnold is he's going to hit free agency next year, or you got to pick up his option. And the situation there is, okay, say he goes 8-8, are we any more certain on Darnold than we were this offseason? Or if he goes 9-7, does that mean we're giving him $100 million to be our quarterback? So they've got a lot of decisions to make. I think the big X factor is how much they love this Zach Wilson, and if they love him at all. I know that Saleh likes Sam Darnold. That was what he said on the initial outset when he first came on. I know that organization loves Sam Darnold. He's done nothing but represent them to the best of his ability, despite some real negative things. And the Adam Gase factor is real, that Ryan Tannehill went on to be a really good Pro Bowl level quarterback once he left Adam Gase and ended up in Tennessee with a new system. So the question is, once you leave Adam Gase and Darnold now joins the Mike LaFleur, Kyle Shanahan system, is he suddenly going to be a Pro Bowl style quarterback? These are decisions they have to make. The Zach Wilson buzz is real. Teams like him. There's a lot to like. But he didn't play against any competition either this past season. And about 18 months ago, he was in a 3-person race to be the quarterback at BYU. So he's no sure thing. Very interested. Don't know.
But I say they won't have their answer until they at least see Zach Wilson on, I believe, March 31st.
So if Joe Douglas was at Trey Lance's pro day in North Dakota, does he go up to Ryan Pace and John Schneider when they're talking? Hey, what are you guys talking about? What are you, John, I mean, if you're talking to Ryan, you want your first-round pick back with Sam Darnold, and just throw that out there. Any word if he did anything like that? Peter?
Not a bad idea. And I'll tell you, that Fargo thing was interesting. It was the first time that all these GMs were actually together. 30 different teams were represented at Trey Lance's pro day, and it was right before free agency. And I can tell you, they had unfettered access to each other. So, it's a tampering window. You got to be careful with free agents. But if I want to talk about making a possible trade, I haven't seen you in person in over 16 months or whatever it is. There's no combine. I can finally get a chance to pull you aside. From what I know, there were no conversations, and Darnold wasn't shopped exclusively or at all at that pro day. But like I always say, the phone lines are open until they're not. So
operators standing by. Operators standing by. And so what is the deal with Deshaun Watson right now, Peter? We had Mike Lombardi on yesterday. He said he's here and he wants no part of the AFC East teams. He wants Denver. He wants San Francisco. And then San Francisco is just fascinating with Jimmy Garoppolo and what may happen. And here's the new league year starting, and we haven't heard a thing about Garoppolo. What do you got for me on that right now?
Yeah, well, I don't know if this has been reported yet. I didn't say it on our show, but I've heard from secondary sources that the Niners were actually looking at Andy Dalton also. And the question is, were they looking at Andy Dalton to be a backup, or were they looking at Andy Dalton to be a starter? And if that's even on their radar when they have Josh Rosen and Jimmy Garoppolo, what does that tell you about Jimmy? So if they were interested at all in Andy Dalton, and maybe it is just to be a backup to Jimmy because he gets injured so often.
Right.
I think that leaves a door open. But, gosh, can you imagine Deshaun Watson and Kyle Shanahan's offense? It would be amazing.
Well,
they add Trent Williams. It all makes sense. But remember, they were sniffing around on Brady last year, and they essentially were like, we're going to with Jimmy Garoppolo and go to war with the guy who got us the Super Bowl. They're going big splash for Brady. So, Jimmy is always fascinating there because, yet again, he missed 10 games last season. We really have only 1 year, a 16-game season where he took him to the Super Bowl that we're basing it on. But this is really the final year of his whole contract deal. So if they roll with him, this is probably a make or break for Jimmy in San Francisco. And if they don't, I would not be surprised at all if they made some big move.
Peter, thanks for the call. Appreciate it. Let's do this a lot more often over the next few weeks as we get closer to that draft in Ohio where so much could happen on that first night of the draft. Oh, my goodness. It's really shaping up to be big. Appreciate the time as always.
Cannot wait. And, Rich, for your honor and because of our friendship, I have taken Juwan Howard and the Michigan Wolverines to win it all in my bracket. There we go.
How good are you normally picking your bracket, Peter?
Terrible. I always go with Gonzaga, and they lose in the second round.
Peter, thanks for the call. I appreciate it. And the confidence. Thank you so much.
You're the man.
Right back at you. That's Peter Schrager, at P. Schrags on Twitter. I follow him. You should as well. At GMFB as well. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.